He never returned to the place that broke him. A story about self-worth, wisdom, and walking away with dignity. Part 1: The Return Invitation. It had been 6 years since Ion had walked out of that office. 6 years since the last time he stood in that boardroom with his dignity bleeding on the floor, humiliated in front of colleagues, accused of something he didn't do, while those who knew the truth chose silence over integrity. He remembered the way his voice trembled that day, not from guilt, but from disbelief. And now, after all these years, an email sat in his inbox. "Ion, we would love for you to consult on our next big project. You're the best we know in this field. The same company. The same people. The same glass building that once saw him leave with shattered pride. A friend once told him, never return to the place that broke you unless you're going back to buy it." And Ion wasn't here to buy anything. He sat quietly in his living room, sipping tea. He had everything he once thought he'd lose that day: his name, his peace, his self-worth. And more. He had built a new career, a better life, and more importantly, a stronger self. He clicked delete. No anger. No hate. Just a quiet kind of wisdom. A wise man never returns to a place where he was humiliated for no reason, because he knows his self-respect is more sacred than his feelings. Part 2: What they think is none of your business. People talked about him after he left. They said he was too sensitive, too proud, not mature enough to move past things. But what they didn't know is this: a man who knows who he is does not seek validation from the people who crushed him. Ion had learned this the hard way: what others think of you is none of your business. One day, during a seminar, a young man asked him, "Sir, how do you handle being misunderstood?" Ion smiled and replied, "By letting people talk and keeping my peace. If you argue with fools, people might not know who the fool is." Part 3: If no one helps you, do it alone. When Ion started over, no one helped him. No colleagues came forward. No friends pulled strings. He was alone with nothing but his broken heart and unshakable will. But he learned something priceless in solitude. If you can survive your thoughts, you can survive anything. He used the silence to rebuild. Used the quiet nights to master his craft. He grew, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. He didn't owe anyone his journey. He owed himself the life he knew he deserved. Part 4: Self-worth is more important than a seat at the table. One of his old co-workers once messaged him, "You should come back. They're different now. They're treating people better." But Ion had already outgrown that version of himself who once begged for a seat at a table where he was barely tolerated. He had created his own table. One where respect was not a privilege but a standard. Where he didn't have to shrink to fit. Where his silence wasn't mistaken for weakness. Your self-worth must never depend on someone else's ability to see it. Part 5: The family you create is greater than the one you escape. Some of the deepest wounds he carried didn't come from strangers or coworkers. They came from people who shared his blood. They didn't believe in his dreams. They belittled his ideas. They laughed when he said he'd build something from scratch. But years later, the man who once ate alone in his tiny apartment now sat across a dinner table filled with faces who chose him. Not for what he had, but for who he was. He learned a hard truth. The family you create, through love, loyalty, and truth, is often more sacred than the one you were born into. Part 6. Never accept disrespect at any cost. There's a difference between patience and self-betrayal. And too often, we call the second one kindness. Ion had done that once. He let things slide. He tolerated jokes that cut deep. He accepted apologies that never came. Until one day, he stood in the mirror and asked, if I saw someone treat my sister or my friend like this, would I stay silent? And that was the day he chose to leave, not because he hated them, but because he finally loved himself enough to stop shrinking. Part 7. Silence is power, not weakness. There were days when people tried to provoke him online, in meetings, even in public. But he no longer felt the need to defend every lie or clarify every misunderstanding. Be silent when you are angry, he learned. Because the most expensive thing you'll ever pay for is a moment of lost self-control. Silence became his weapon. Stillness became his strength. Part 8. He who masters himself needs no one's approval. People thought Ion's glow-up came from success, from money, from recognition. But it came long before that. It came when he learned to master his mind, to discipline his desires, to walk away from what felt good but wasn't good for him. They say power is in mastering others. But Ion discovered a higher truth. True power is in mastering yourself. Part 9. The final lesson. Now, years later, he is invited to speak at global forums. Respected, admired, remembered not for the way he rose, but for the way he refused to sink. One young woman asked him at a recent talk, "How do you know when to walk away?" He answered gently, "When your presence is tolerated but not valued, walk away. When your soul feels heavy in someone's company, walk away. When staying costs your peace, your worth, and your joy, walk away. And never, ever look back." Epilogue. He never went back. Not because he was bitter. Not because he held a grudge. But because he finally knew what he was worth. And once a man tastes peace, he never chooses noise again. Thank you for spending this time with us. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Don't Give Up. Let's continue exploring life's challenges and insights together.